Joshua Williamson, who you will know for writing DC Comics, Duke #1, and doing stuff with Skybound and the Energon universe, recently gave an interview to CBR. And he said something really interesting about comic book fans that I wanted us to talk about. So here's what he said. Quote, when people are happy, they spend less. It sucks, but it is a pattern that I've seen in my time at DC. He said that to Popverse. I don't want to make anybody mad. The thing is what I would want to say. First and foremost, trust me. It's not just about, oh, I want to piss people off. That's not what you're doing at all. What you want to do is you want to establish some kind of trust first and then say, listen, this is going to be a roller coaster ride. It's going to be crazy at times. There's going to be some ups and downs and it's going to be nuts, but trust me to come on this ride with me. Now, that is one of the oldest debated things in not just comics, but in overall media. Uh, when fans are happy, what is fans being happy? And when they are happy, do they invest as much of their time or their money into the things that they love? You look on social media, the answer looks like it's no. Because so many people, most people, it appears on social, spend more of their time talking about what they don't like rather than what they do like. So the question is, and obviously Joshua Williamson is a very successful writer at DC, so his word on this probably holds more sway than ours does. But I want to pick it apart anyway. Do you agree with Joshua Williamson that when fans are happy and they are enjoying what it is that they are getting, that they are less likely to spend about it or talk about it?
Hmm.
That's a tough one because I have a hard time saying when they're happy, they don't talk about it. But the inverse makes sense to me. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like the idea that when they're unhappy, they do talk about it makes sense. I tend to have an algorithm that shows me a lot of positive things in comics that people enjoy. But I know I'm an outlier in that sense. I know the loudest voices are the ones of dissent usually. I mean, Zeb Wells is Spider Man. The whole Paul situation, we crack jokes about it all the time on the show, but people are not happy about that. And I think numbers wise, you can tell that it's not. I mean, it does well for a comic book, but people have said they've dropped off because of it.
People say that, but it's
I know, yeah.
BS. Amazing Spider-Man does amazing. And the exact reason Marvel does things like that, we talked about this in another one of these that we did, where we talked about why Marvel will never give us Mary Jane and Peter together, like in a full-fledged sense, is because of exactly this. If people stopped buying Spider-Man, that would incentivize Marvel to reunite the two more than it would if people continued to buy the book.
I'd be curious to look at the Death of Miss Marvel sales
Ooh.
to see because people were
The
unhappy about that, but I bet you it did pretty well.
I bet you people picked it up. I mean, for more reasons than one.
People hate Reed.
Yeah. And I think but I think there's a distinction, and I think Williamson's probably making the distinction between people disliking a book or disliking the plot for tension and release. What I imagine the happiness is a release. It is the point at which something of within the storyline has resolved, and so we're kind of coasting within that resolution, and the tension being you've built up drama, you've built up this emotion and this fervor, and you gotta see what the next issue is happening, and you get to the end of the page, you're like, oh, there's another one, and something's gonna happen, like, and but there's a positivity to that, which I guess I'm trying to figure out. Um, it's excitement, and I think when people are mad at a book, um, I think that's an example of hate watching. But when it comes down to people not being happy, I think it's people liking the excitement of not getting to the resolution or not having the resolution, not having the happy ending. And maybe the ending can't be happy, but at the end of that, then you get people who are either dissent or are fans of what happened in the story. So I think I agree with him. I think you spend more when you want to find the end.
We have to talk to Bean about this, but I think, funnily enough, I think one of my counters to Williamson is actually comes from the Energon universe. Spoilers for Transformers #1, but they off Bumblebee immediately.
Mm,
And you know what? Any other, like, I feel like if it was superhero comics, people would be pissed off about that, and there would be, you know, um, actual, but it seems like with Transformers, everyone was like, oh no, they did that, but it's interesting, and I'm ready for the ride. And Transformers did very well.
yeah,
And I feel like a lot more people were more like, all right, let them cook, than they are for a lot of superhero comics with Transformers.
But I think that's because Bumblebee's popularity is more in the movies, and people who
Fair. Yeah, I
like
don't. Yeah,
Transformers don't care about Bumblebee. So killing Bumblebee is actually not. It's not a risk in comics. They wouldn't do it in the movies, but in the comics, it's not a risk. It just looks like that because we associate now the Transformers so much with the movies.
yeah, and I'm
sure.
not activated enough in Transformers fandom to even know where Bumblebee stands.
Yeah, Bumblebee
Weird.
got hot off the films.
Sure. Yeah.
So I think an example of what he's talking about is the fact that there's no Justice League right now. Obviously, it would be the play to bring the league back, and that's what we are all looking for. That's what we're advocating for. That's what we want, and we're not happy that there is no Justice League right now. But when there is a Justice League, like Marco said, that the tension that we're in right now, because there isn't one, will be released when there is.
Mm.
I think the problem comes in when we're not happy with that status quo, right? The lack of a league, but then we're also not happy with the story that's being told in absence of the league. So if there wasn't a Justice League, but we loved Titans and we loved Beast World and we were really into it, then it would be like, all right, well, I'm not happy that there's no league and I'm waiting for that, but I'm locked into what's happening right now.
Sure.
I would agree. I agree with what he said. And I think DC could capitalize on that if the situation was better, if the story was a bit better. But he is right, because when Justice League #1 comes out, it's going to be big.
It's gonna be big, and people are gonna be like, "Why did we get this sooner?" Ah, Beast World was a, and in that case, people aren't gonna be happy, right? Well, I guess they'll be both. They'll be happy that it's come out, that that storyline has finally resolved, um, but it's gonna sell. So maybe there's a counter to that, because you're right. Like at that point, that's gonna be hotcakes.
So comic book fans love edging, apparently.
It'll be a lot bigger. Justice League #1, when it comes out, maybe sometime this year or 2025, it'll be a lot bigger than it would have been if when Dark Crisis ended, there was just a Justice League #1.
It's almost like absence makes the heart grow fonder, and during that absence, I'm going to rage on Twitter.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's why Jim Lee or Todd McFarlane returning to work on X-Men or Spider-Man respectively would be such a huge deal, while Rob Liefeld returning to Deadpool or some other or X-Force or some other property no one cares as much about. I'm not saying it's because there's not an audience for that. I'm saying it's because he's done it a lot.
Mm,
He's been there and done that, and
it's
and
not
audiences have seen it.
it's not novel anymore.
It's exactly, there's no nostalgia to tap into because he's already like gone into that well and banged that drum. Um, I think that what Williamson is saying sort of is, hey, whatever it is you think is going to happen it's just not happening right now.
Okay. And that trust piece I think is integral, right? Because
Yeah.
there's definitely moments where I want to say even when we were reviewing Hoxpox, like week by week, we're going, damn, something's going on here. Like there is I'm and some of us were probably a little more positive on each of the individual issues, whatever it might be. So um but I trust Hickman. I trust the storytelling, and maybe I didn't dig this, but surely it's gonna ladder up to something, and that's part of that. Maybe I'm unhappy at the moment now because I don't see the full picture yet. And once I see that full picture, it's going to be a kick to the brain, and my my socks will not get knocked off in that shit.
So you're lucky this one's just video, not audio. So that actually works.
Tune in on YouTube.
Yeah, I completely agree. Completely
And
agree.
it's hard, and I guess the counter to that is it's hard because let's say I trust a creator, um, like Beast World. We're gonna use that example. Um, I trust
Tom Taylor.
Taylor, but the execution isn't there, and he's asking me to trust him. And I liked Nightwing, I liked Knights of Steel, I like some of the other stuff he's put out. But he's asking me to trust him, and it's a little hard to do so because the execution hasn't been there. So I'm currently in that unhappy mode, and I want to get to that resolution. So I'm kind of pushing through for that. Um, but it's not trending well.
And I feel like trust giving teams the leeway to get that trust is harder nowadays because things don't last as long. You know, runs aren't as long. Al Ewing got to do Immortal Hulk, which was what 50 issues.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and he got to cook on it. But like now, everything is like, all right, well, 6 issues, this guy's off. It wasn't selling enough with issue 1 or issue 2 that we have to drop him. So like, it's hard to even garner that trust if you're not hot out the gate.
There's a level of not delaying that gratification and needing to out the gate suddenly do all the things that we've experienced in the world of comics, but the patience involved in that is the excitement. Like you wait for things to happen because they're earned, not because they need to happen. And we talk about that pretty consistently when we do Pool stuff. It's like, is this earned? Was the trials and tribulations of a character that ultimately led to this point, did it make sense, and did it feel consequential to the story, to the narrative, and to said character's growth? If so, you did the work. If not, you tried to squeeze things in because that's what other writers have done, to create tension and drama, but it feels empty.
Yeah, I think when it comes to trust, that's something that is um like in your Hickman example. I trusted Hickman during House and Powers and beyond because of the fact that he had built up so much goodwill with me.
Hmm.
Avengers was risky on Hickman's part, 2 separate Avengers titles, dealing with the same story, same writer, everything else, big stuff, right? And it could have gone ass up, but it didn't. It was phenomenal. And so when Hickman's name is on a new thing, I go, oh, I trust him. He's never let me down before. And so then when Ultimate Invasion happens, and it's like, this wasn't too great. I go, okay, but it's Hickman. Now, if I don't like gods and I don't like Ultimate Spider-Man, maybe then I'm worried about when a new Hickman book drops. Maybe then I don't trust it. With Tom Taylor right now, I don't trust it because I already don't like Titans, like what's been going on.
Hmm.
And I don't feel like the track record for me liking Tom Taylor's books of late has been too great. So I'm in that space with Taylor.
Okay, fair.
And so I think what it comes down to ultimately is trust, being able to trust the process, but also enjoying the ride. When the league comes back, I'll be happy. Have I enjoyed the ride thus far? No. But I haven't given up.
Yeah. How do you guys think about um granting people the time? Because to Tyler's earlier point, a lot of creators don't have the time to be able to do and build the world, the narrative that they need. Um, and I feel like that becomes the one of the biggest issues in storytelling at the moment is you need to have a knockout series in the first 6 issues, and sometimes a lot of that is just cleaning up loose threads, and the engaging part of that can get a bit lost, or the potential for the future is probably better than what the initial start was in the example of Immortal Hulk.
I have a difficult time with the idea that it should take multiple arcs to hook readers. I think that you can't assume as a creator that you have all the time in the world, and I don't think that that's unfair, because if you, I mean, look, if you're watching a TV show and you don't like the first few episodes, you're gonna keep watching. You're gonna watch a whole season of a show to wait and see if you like the next one. No, you're gonna drop it. And comics are expensive, so really it is on the onus of the creative team to knock it out of the park. And a first arc, to me, that is long enough to tell, not to do your magnum opus, right? But to tell me enough to tell me that I need to be here for this.
I'm capable. I'm able to, at the very least, introduce you to the things that matter, and then from there, let me take you on that ride.
Yeah, it should be a ride. The first arc should be a ride.
It's coming up.
These aren't new characters. You don't need to introduce me to a whole world. You need to tell me good stories right out the gate.
I could use a Batman origin one more time, though.
Yeah, I forget that one sometimes.
So yeah, I think especially when it comes to the IP, yes, we want to give creators grace, but ultimately I do believe that Williamson is right. I think that, if you earn the grace, if you earn the time, you get it, but you've got to make the between here and then, the here and then, it's got to be good. Maybe you're not giving me everything that I want, right away, but the ride has to be enjoyable.
Sure.
All right, so we'll leave it there. Where do you guys stand on that issue? Do you if you see an issue 1 and you like it, do you keep going with that book regardless of what comes next? What's your rope? How much rope do you give comic book creators and just entertainment at large? We want to hear from you. Leave it in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Take care.